6:45. This is a Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by J. Yogaraj and read by Lavani Vijayatunga. First, we take a look at the headlines. The next phase of COVID vaccination in Ratnapura and Jaffna districts. The Army Chief says travel restrictions will not be lifted on May 31st and June 4th. The power supply interrupted due to prevailing inclement weather condition has been restored by now. The police media spokesman says the present restrictions will remain the same until 7th of June. Government to provide 5,000 rupee allowance from June 2nd. Uptick in COVID figures as 2,243 more test positive. Sri Lanka reports 2,573 more COVID-19 recoveries. Moratua mayor, who was remanded for interrupting the vaccination drive, has been remanded until the 11th of June. In news overseas, Hong Kong, Jimmy Lai jailed again for pro-democracy protests. And in sports news, Sri Lanka beat Bangladesh by 97 runs in the third ODI played at Dhaka International Cricket Stadium. Those are the headlines, and now more to the details of the local news. The next phase of COVID-19 inoculation drive will kick off in Ratnapura and Jaffna districts, Army Commander General Shavindra Silva stated today. Coronavirus vaccination programs are implemented in accordance with the health sector's recommendations based on the assessment of risks of COVID-19 infection in each locality. Immunizing the public against COVID-19 first commenced in the Western Province and was later expanded to Galle, Mathura and Kurunegala districts. As of yesterday, as many of 1,503,635 individuals have been administered the first dose of the coronavirus jab, and 344,397 of them have received the second dose as well, epidemiology unit's data showed. Meanwhile, Deputy Director General of Health Services, Dr. Hemant Herath, stated that the second batch of Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccine which arrived in Sri Lanka last night, will be rolled out in Kandy district. The island-wide travel restrictions that are currently in force will not be lifted on the 31st of May and 4th of June, the National Operations Centre for Prevention of COVID-19 Outbreak announced today. As per previous announcements issued in this regard, the restrictions will continue until 4 a.m. on the 7th of June without being eased midway, Commander of the Army General Shavindra Silva stressed. However, division secretariats and district secretariats have been directed to carry out mobile services to help people to purchase essential items, the Army Chief further said. Further, members of the public are urged not to leave their houses during this travel-restricted period. Chairman of the Ceylon Electricity Board, Vijitha Herath, says that the power supply that was interrupted due to the prevailing inclement weather condition has been restored by now. The water levels of reservoirs and dams have reached the spill level due to the heavy rain. Mr. Herath said around 500 million rupees has been saved due to low consumption during the last few days. The demand for power supply has reduced sharply due to the travel restrictions. Police media spokesman DIG Ajit Rohana says that the present restrictions will remain the same until the 7th of June. Accordingly, hotels, restaurants, liquor shops, nightclubs and meat shops will remain closed during this period. The regulations on functionings of shops will remain the same during this period. Political force or any other form of force cannot be used at the vaccination centres, the police media spokesman added. This is the news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. And we continue with more local news. The government has decided to pay an allowance of 5,000 rupees from 2nd June, said State Minister Shahan Semasinghe. The allowance will be paid to Samruddhi recipients, those who are already receiving the government allowances, low-income earners and those who have lost their income due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ministry of Health reports that another 2,243 persons have tested positive for coronavirus today. All new cases are associated with the New Year COVID-19 cluster. This brings the total number of COVID-19 cases confirmed in the country thus far to 177,104. Presently, 29,417 infected patients are being treated at hospitals and treatment centres across the island. Meanwhile, the number of total recoveries reached 146,362 earlier today, as 2,573 patients were discharged from medical care. This brings the country's total COVID-19 recoveries count to 146,362. Mayor of Moratuwa Municipal Council, Samanlal Fernando, who was arrested for unruly behavior during the COVID-19 vaccination program at Moratuwa, has been remanded until the 11th of June. He was arrested after surrendering to Mount Lavinia Police this morning and was produced before the Mount Lavinia Magistrates Court by Moratuwa Police. The court ordered that the accused be placed in remand custody until 11th of June. The police media spokesman stated that the statements are being recorded with regard to the incident from witnesses, while Moratuwa Police is conducting further investigations. According to reports, the mayor has obstructed the duties of medical officers proceeding with the inoculation program while displaying disorderly behavior on Thursday. Mr. Fernando was produced before Mount Lavinia Magistrates today under the provisions of Quarantine and Prevention of Diseases Ordinance and the relevant sections of the Penal Code. And to conclude the local news, the headlines once again. The next phase of COVID-19 vaccination in Ratnapura and Jaffna districts. The Army Chief says travel restrictions will not be lifted on 31st of May and 4th of June. The power supply interrupted due to the prevailing inclement weather condition has been restored by now. Police media spokesman says that the present restrictions will remain the same until the 7th of June. The government to provide 5,000 rupee allowance from June 2nd. Uptick in COVID-19 figures as 2,243 more test positive. Sri Lanka reports 2,573 more COVID-19 recoveries. Moratuwa Mayor, who was remanded for interrupting the vaccination drive, has been remanded until the 11th of June. And that was the local news.
A mother knows the pain of each member of the family. Siddhalepa, the trusted relief for aches and pains.
An effective therapy for relief from cold, sneezing, flu, headaches, swelling due to toothaches, rheumatic, discomforts, and muscular aches and pains. Siddhalepa, the Vidya Mahatmya in every home.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vidya Mahatmya.
The main news story for tonight, Minister Vasudeva Nanayakkara says greater harvest and effective yields have been received from tea cultivation using alternative fertilizers instead of chemical fertilizers. Some complain about low collection or turnout of tea leaves using other fertilizers. However, the minister said the organic cultivation will yield more harvest if it is used effectively. The minister also said that it is high time that small and medium-scale cultivators focus on organic cultivation at this juncture. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vidya Mahatmya. Brush your teeth twice a day for healthy teeth and gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, your trusted brands in oral care for many years.
Supiriviki Ayurvedic toothpaste for adults. Kakulu Ayurvedic toothpaste for kids. 9 Ayurvedic ingredients of Supiriviki will protect your teeth and strengthen your gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, products from Siddhalepa.
And in Watchlight tonight, the consumers and residents complain about the price hikes of some essential goods at some private sales outlets. This has caused immense difficulties to low-income families. The consumers also complain that certain errant traders are exploiting the situation of travel restrictions and increasing the price at their will. This is for the attention of the Consumers Affairs Authority. From that, we move on to the headlines of the world news. Hong Kong, Jimmy Lai jailed again for pro-democracy protests. India coronavirus, Delhi to gradually come out of COVID lockdown. Belarus plane, Russia accuses EU for risking passenger safety. Those are the headlines, and now more to the details of the world news. Hong Kong pro-democracy media mogul Jimmy Lai has been sentenced for 14 months in prison for participating in an unauthorized assembly in the year 2019. Lai, aged 73, is currently already serving time for participating in another demonstration that year. He will serve part of this new sentence consecutively, meaning Mr. Lai faces a total of 20 months in jail. The verdict comes as mainland China is increasingly cracking down on Hong Kong's rights and freedom. India's capital Delhi is set to gradually end its weeks-long lockdown as the number of new COVID cases continue to drop. From Monday, factories will be allowed to operate and construction activities will also resume. The city saw peaks of 25,000 cases in April, but it's been reporting less than 1,500 daily cases in the past few days. But the officials have warned that the pandemic was not over yet and urged people to keep following the safety protocols. Russia's foreign ministry has condemned the EU's call for Europe-based airlines to avoid Belarusian airspace, calling it completely irresponsible. Spokeswoman Maria Zakharova, commenting after Russia has denied entry to two airlines that planned to avoid Belarus, said passenger safety was at risk. EU leaders had acted after Belarus forced a Ryanair plane to divert and land in capital Minsk. A Belarusian dissident journalist and his girlfriend were then arrested. And to conclude the world news, the headlines once again. Hong Kong Jimmy Lai jailed again for pro-democracy protests. India coronavirus, Delhi to gradually come out of COVID lockdown. Belarus plane, Russia accuses EU for risking passenger safety. That was the world news, and now we move on to development news. The economic centres will remain open on the 30th and 31st of this month. The wholesale, retail sale and mobile sale traders could purchase goods on these days. Meanwhile, the Paleo Fish Market will be open from tomorrow. That was the development news.
Sports News is brought to you by...
When Aya bought a motorbike, he bought 2 helmets. So sweet of him. I'm sure the other one is for me.
In whatever we do, we Sri Lankans are always thinking of others. When we get Munchie Super Cream Crackers, they're not just for ourselves. Munchie Super Cream Cracker. Super kiyanne nikan neveyi.
Moving on to sports news, Sri Lanka beat Bangladesh by 97 runs in the third and final ODI played at Dhaka International Stadium. Sri Lanka batted first and made 286 with a loss of 6 wickets in 50 overs. In reply, Bangladesh were bowled out for 189 in the 43rd over. Sri Lankan paceman Dushmantha Chamira captured 5 wickets for giving away only 16 runs. However, Bangladesh won the series 2-1. That was the sports news. Business news coming up.
My wife always sets a full lunch table, even if it's just the two of us. She always expects people to drop by, like maybe the army.
In whatever we do, we Sri Lankans are always thinking of others. When we get Munchie Super Cream Crackers, they're not just for ourselves. Munchie Super Cream Cracker. Super kiyanne nikan neveyi.
Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply. Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money.
In business news, DFCC Bank has been rated among the top 100 most valuable consumer brands in Sri Lanka for the year 2021. Ranking 27th in the analysis conducted by Brands Finance Sri Lanka, DFCC was able to climb a notch to the 27th position following last year's position as of 28th most valuable consumer brand in the country. That was the business news, and economic news follows.
Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money. Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply.
Economic news, courtesy of...
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
And in economic news, the Hambantota International Port, HIP, will partner with Intertech Lanka Private Limited to establish a state-of-the-art petroleum testing laboratory which will be unique to Sri Lanka. Through this facility, Intertech will provide innovative and bespoke assurance, testing, inspection and certification services. Johnson Liu, CEO of HIP HIPG says HIPG has great potential in energy services due to its location in the Indian Ocean Rim, where about 50% of the world's maritime oil is traded. Our oil fuel bunker, LPG, and future LNG operations are sure to cement HIP's position as an energy hub in the region. That was economic news and the weather report to conclude.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
And finally, the weather report. The Met Department says showers will occur at times in the Sabaragamuwa province and in the Nuwara and Kandy districts. Fairly heavy falls, about 50 millimeters, can be expected at some places in these areas. Several spells of showers will occur in the western and northwestern provinces and in the Galle and Mathura districts. Showers or thunder showers will occur at times at few places in the Uva province, Ampara and Batticaloa district during the evening or night. Wind speed can increase up to 40 kilometers per hour at times over the island, and especially the wind speed can increase up to 50 kilometers per hour at times in the western slopes of the Central Hills, northern, north central and northwestern provinces, and in the Trincomalee and Hambantota districts. This weather report was published this evening at 7:30 p.m. Further details could be obtained by visiting the official website of the department. And that was the weather report.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
And before we conclude this bulletin of news, let's get back to the headlines once again. The next phase of COVID-19 vaccination in Ratnapura and Jaffna districts. The Army Chief says travel restrictions will not be lifted on May 31st and 4th June. The power supply, interrupted due to the prevailing inclement weather condition, has been restored by now. Police media spokesman says the present restrictions will remain the same until 7th of June. Government to provide 5,000 rupee allowance from 2nd June. Uptick in COVID-19 figures as 2,243 more test positive. Sri Lanka reports 2,573 more COVID-19 recoveries. Moratuwa Mayor, who was remanded for interrupting the vaccination drive, has been remanded until the 11th of June. In news overseas, in Hong Kong, Jimmy Lai jailed again for pro-democracy protests. And in sports news, Sri Lanka beat Bangladesh by 97 runs in the third ODI played at Dhaka International Cricket Stadium. And with that, we conclude this bulletin of news. Now it's back to your Friday evening host and my good friend Geethanjali on the other side of the glass panel to keep you entertained.